Welcome to this tutorial about how to start working with a distinct tone of voice for your venue on social media. My name is Emil and I'm a digital specialist here at the creative agency Volume, where I help music organizers with their online marketing efforts. And one of the things I talk a lot about with the venues is tone of voice, and that is with good reason. Because like a well-written music review or a thoughtful lyric in a song, a distinct tone of voice can really help the audience get further into the music that is being presented. So in this video we're going to cover how to create a distinct tone of voice for your venue that takes into consideration your target audience, the channels you're communicating on, and the values that your venue is built on. So let's get started. So let's get further into creating your own tone of voice on social media. Tone of voice is a huge subject, of course, but I've kind of distilled this video down to a couple of simple steps that you can start on today. So let's start with the first step. And that is to collect some samples from previous posts and to discuss them. What you really want to do here is look through your different profiles and kind of gather in a lot of representative data. And what you might find is a lot of posts written by a lot of different people in different voices. And that's not a problem at all. What we want to do here is really get as much data as possible so we have something tangible to discuss. And some good questions to ask ourselves in this phase is, what posts could have been from competitors? If the post could have been from a competitor, it's not really your distinct tone of voice. So ask yourself that question. Also ask yourself what posts are spot on for what you're trying to do. Maybe you've just really hit the spot with a kind of copy or a picture, a video post, something that you really want to follow. You need to highlight those, and a good idea is to group the good ones on a whiteboard for everyone to see. Yeah, because creating a consistent tone of voice is really a team effort. So the next step is to map messaging to the target audience. And if you've watched the tutorial about strategy, you've already know that a good idea when talking about target audiences is to create a persona. A buyer persona is a semi-fictional representation of your ideal customer based on market research and real data about your existing customers. So what we're really trying to do with a persona is give us an example of an ideal customer that we can sort of have in mind when we are writing and creating content. So that's really useful when creating a tone of voice, that we have a real person to sort of imagine in our heads when we're writing copy. So I'm just going to show you an example of a persona here. This is a persona called John. He's a young Copenhagen-based man studying at the University of Copenhagen. He's not afraid to try new things and does a couple of creative side projects while he's studying, which makes him busy but also a very social person. Him and his friends are always on the lookout for something fun to do on weekends, and music is a preferred subject among them. He's into urban music and loves to go through lyrics and their meaning on Genius, blasting the Rap Caviar playlist in his headphones while trying to come up with funny comments to his friends' Instagram posts. So this really gives us an idea of who we are writing to, and it can kind of inspire certain words, certain phrases, certain ways to think about language, colors, and so on. Another helpful thing to really think about here is what you're really selling to this person. So oftentimes we hear a lot of music venues talk about the kind of music that they're presenting on stage, what genre it is, and what the artists have released, what's the catalog and stuff like that. But when you're really trying to build a unique selling proposition for your venue and a tone of voice in that, you might find it useful to think about your product as something else actually. And I found this article that maps a lot of different selling propositions that you're really selling to your target audience. So you're really selling stress reduction or a feeling of togetherness or nostalgia or an escape from everyday life. And this is all kind of subjects that gives us an opportunity to write something interesting from. So you can write a text about being, coming to your venue and feeling that feeling of nostalgia, or, getting that personal connection with an artist. And this will, of course, maybe help you make your language more colorful. Step 3 is to come up with some keywords that define you. And one of the things that can be really helpful is to think of yourself as a person. So here on the left, we have one of my personal favorites, A$AP Rocky. And on the right, another one of my personal favorites, Bruce Springsteen. And each of these characters kind of represents different traits. A$AP Rocky would be fly and flashy and bold and self-confident, and Bruce Springsteen would embody integrity and being earnest and having like a tongue-in-cheek feel, but also being poetic. So this is some kind of keywords that we can use to define ourselves. So maybe you have a person in your organization, or maybe you can think of a famous person that kind of embodies what you want to be to your target audience. So moving forward, when you've defined those keywords, you can create a tone of voice deck. So a tone of voice deck is something that we see a lot of brands doing, and they can be everything from just a couple of pages to 50, maybe 60 pages with examples of posts. You don't have to be that comprehensive about this, but it will help you to define some guidelines for the ones who are producing content for you. One of the things that's a good idea to incorporate in your tone of voice deck is kind of a description of your keywords. So let's say that we've defined a keyword as being urban. We need to describe that. So a description of that could be, we have our ear to the streets and know what's going on. We appreciate ambition, hustle, and the come up of new exciting acts. So now we have to look into, what does that mean that we do, and what does that mean that we don't? So the do's could be, we use slang and strong verbs and shout out new artists with confidence. That gives us a platform to write from. And don'ts, we can't be boring, we can't be like somebody's mom, and we can't be very corporate. And you can do that for more keywords, describing the description and the do's and don'ts of every keyword. You can also do it by defining specific words. So maybe you know that when you talk about the artists, we always want to call them our friends in this band. Maybe you have some nicknames for your venue that you want to incorporate. Maybe you call it the Bass Cave, or maybe the audience is always family or friends. And you can also define what kind of slang you are allowed to use and what kind of emojis. And this, of course, always have to relate to the keywords, the target audience, and the post that you defined in the beginning of this. So step 5 is to create consistency throughout all touch points with the target audience. So across social media, across customer service, print ads, websites and newsletters, and also on the venue, you have to be consistent in this tone of voice. A good example of this is the venue Pumpehuset in Copenhagen, who has this event series called Byhaven. So this is the poster from Byhaven, which has a really distinct color choice. And you can see that this graphic setting is really consistent, because when you go to the venue, it's the backdrop behind the artists performing. And the whole concept of this concert series is to be a really laid back, cozy place. So they do posts where they talk about their chestnut tree and how they're collecting chestnuts for the guests to play with, which is just a fun little thing that adds to the whole feeling of the concert series. A great way to create consistency across channels is to work with a consistent visual identity, like Vega has done here. So this really creates the opportunity to template a lot of things when creating content. And templating, of course, brings the time spent on each post down. And it looks great. So it might seem a bit out of your budget range to invest in a full-fledged visual identity, but just having these templates created once can really, really help you bring down the time spent on creating consistency. So I would highly recommend you looking into creating some kind of template that can translate itself into different kinds of mediums. So let's go through the steps one more time. Step 1 was to collect samples from previous posts and discuss them. Step 2 was to map the messaging to target audiences, work with your personas, and so on. Step 3 was to come up with some keywords that define you. Step 4 was to create a tone of voice deck so everybody knows what the tone of voice is. And step 5 was to create consistency throughout all touch points. I hope this video has inspired you to start working on tone of voice on social media. Now, if you want to see more like this, you should visit the Pulse website, where you can find inspirational articles, videos, and information about the Pulse program.